Hey guys, we are here to learn about dividing fractions, and specifically we are going to be dividing fractions by whole numbers. Before we start with that, I first want to have a quick review of multiplying fractions. And what I want you to think about is the operation multiplication. And the question is, what does it do? So a good way to think about multiplication is to think of it as the word times. And when you see a multiplication sign, it tells you how many times to repeat something. So right here we have 1/2. And we're going to repeat it 2 times. So here's my 1/2, and let's repeat it. And now we have it 2 times. How much do we have? We have 2 halves, or 1 whole. Next example, 1/2 times, how many times do we repeat it? 3 times. So here is 1/2 repeated 3 times. There it is once, there it is twice. We're going to need to build another whole, get another half. So altogether, here it is repeated 1, 2, 3 times. We have 3 halves, or 1 whole and a half. Let's look at another example. Here's 1/2. How many times are we going to repeat it? 1/4 of a time. Well, to really think about that, 1/2 repeated 1 time means we just have it once. 1/2 repeated 1/4 of a time, that means it's going to be smaller than 1 time. So 1/2 repeated 1/4 of a time. So let's take that 1/2. And I only want it 1 out of those 4 times. So there's my 4 times right here. I only want it this 1 time here. 1/2 repeated 1/4 of a time is 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. 1/8. Let's do 1/2 repeated 1/3 of a time. Now that means it's going to get smaller. We're repeating it, but we're repeating it less than 1 time. So here's my 3 parts. We are going to take 1 of those parts. So that's going to give us 1 part out of 6. Now, let's look at my 1/2 repeated 4 times. There's my 1/2. It's going to be more than 1 time. It's going to get greater. Repeat it 4 times. 1, 2. Here's my new half. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. We have 4 halves, or 1 whole, 2 wholes. So that's multiplication. It tells you how many times you're repeating something. That should help us understand division. And when you look at division, it's not telling you how many times to repeat something. It's telling you how many times to cut or divide something up. Let's look at some examples. Here's 1/2. Cut or divided up twice. So here's my 1/2. Notice we cut or divided it up twice into 2 pieces. What is this new piece size I have? It's twice as small, right? This 1/2 cut up 2 times, divided into 2 pieces. Well, my new piece size, I still just have 1 piece, and the new size of the piece is 1/4. Let's look at our next example. Here is 1/2 cut or divided up 3 times. There it is 3 times. So before, my half was this size. This was my previous starting 1/2. Now it's got 3 times smaller, right? I've cut it up into 3 pieces. This is my new piece size, now that I've cut it up into 3 pieces. 1. And my piece size is 6. 1/6. Okay? Let's look at my next example. 1/2 divided by 4, so that means 1/2 cut up or divided into 4 pieces. And let's see how big it is after we do that cutting or dividing. Now it's 1/2. Now I have it into 3 pieces. Now I've got it into 4 pieces. So this was my previous 1/2. Now I've cut it into 4 pieces. This is the size now. I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 1/8. Now, let's look at a few more examples where in my numerator I don't have a 1. Here's my 2/3. There's my 2/3. I'm going to be cutting or dividing it into 2 pieces. You can see I have 2 pieces now. So previously my 2/3 was this size. Now I've cut or divided it into 2 pieces to get my new size, which is this right here. Now notice there's 2 pieces. And the size is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2/6, or 1/3. Let's look at my next example. Here's 2/3 divided by 3. There's my 2/3. I'm going to be cutting or dividing it into 3 pieces or sections. So previously it was this size. Now it's going to be getting smaller. And now it's this size, right? And you can see that size because I made it 3 times smaller. I cut it 3 times or divided it 3 times. This is my new size. I still have 2 pieces. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9ths for my denominator. 9ths are my piece size. Next example. Here's my 2/3. Let's cut or divide it into 4ths. So I've cut or divided it 4 times, right? Remember what division means. It tells you how many times to cut or divide something. So I took that 2/3, I divided it up 4 times, or I cut it into 4 pieces. Well, previously my 2/3 was this size. After I made my cuts, we're now at this size right here. I still have 2 pieces. And my new piece size is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 2/12. Now we're going to flip over the page and we're going to move from these visual models to just a numerical model that's starting to look like an algorithm. We're only going to do 2 examples this way. So first, let's look at the visual model we had before. Let's make 3/4. Here's 4 sections. I'm going to shade 3 of those. I'm dividing that up into 2 pieces. Divided into 2 pieces. Okay? Oh, we've got 1 too many shaded. Let's erase this one right here. Okay, so just to make sure we're clear, here's my 3/4. 1, 2, 3. I cut it into 2 pieces. Now previously I had all of this. These were my 3/4. There was 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Now I've divided it in half. I've made it into 2 pieces. This is what I now have right here. So I have 3 pieces still. My new piece size is 8ths. I've got 3/8. Let's start to do that without the visual model. I had 3/4 divided by 2. Well, notice I'm going to keep this 3. I'm going to have 3 pieces still. But the size of those pieces is now 2 times smaller, right? And the reason it's 2 times smaller is because when you divided that into 2 pieces, you got twice as many pieces. And that's the biggest place I see kids confused, is they go, wait a minute, you just said I have twice as many pieces, 2 times as many pieces. That sounds like multiplication, but I did division. The reason that is when you divide it into those 2 pieces, you made twice as many pieces, right? And before I had 4 pieces. There's 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, 4 pieces. But after I divided all of those pieces in half, there's twice as many. There's now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so that's why an algorithm for dividing a fraction by a whole number is to keep your numerator, because you have the same number of pieces, but all of those pieces got divided up, so there's now more pieces. There was 4 pieces. Each piece got divided in half. That gave me 8 pieces. And so an algorithm or shortcut way to think about it is your numerator stays the same. Your denominator gets multiplied by whatever number you have here. In this case, 2. 4 times 2 is 8. To understand one more time where that 8 comes from, to start, I had fourths. 1, 2, 3, 4. I divided those fourths in half. That gave me 8s. Let's do our next one. Visual model first. I have sixths. I have 2 of those sixths. I'm going to take the sixths and divide them all into 3 pieces. Let's see what that leaves me with. Before, my 2/6 was this size. Now that it's been divided into 3 pieces, now each piece is this size. I still have 2 pieces, but the number of pieces I have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 18. Let's look at that using our algorithm. Well, I still have 2 pieces, but I took all of those pieces and divided them into 3 pieces. So before I had 6, after I chopped them all into 3 pieces, I've got 3 times as many. 6 times 3 is 18. You've got 2 18ths. Now let's do that without doing any visual model and see how we can tackle some numbers that are harder to work with a visual. Let's take our 300ths times 4 equals C. Well, I'm still going to keep 3 pieces, but I'm going to change the size of those pieces. Okay? I'm going to change the size of those pieces. We want to be dividing right now. I'm going to go ahead and take all 100 pieces and cut or chop each piece 4 times into 4 pieces. I now have 4 times as many pieces. I had 100 pieces. Each of them is divided or chopped into 4 pieces. 100 times 4. I now have 400 pieces. So I now, instead of 300ths, have 3 400ths. Last one. D equals 1/2 divided by 1,000. Well, I'm still going to only have 1 piece. And previously the size was halves. I'm going to take each of those halves and chop it into 1,000 pieces, divide it up into 1,000 pieces, and see how many pieces I have. Well, there was 2 of them. Each one was chopped into 1,000 pieces. 2 times 1,000 gives me 2,000. So I've got 1 2,000th. That is how you divide a fraction by a whole number.